Well, hey, welcome to the Take a Mulligan podcast. Kenny and Brian, my brother here, is here, and we're just excited about today. We're excited about being back on here. It's been a while, Brian, that we've been
Yeah, we've been a little lax
talking,
lately.
haven't
I think,
we?
a little bit of life going on for both of us, more for you.
That, that's a good way to put it. Life goes on, and sometimes you gotta, just put some things by the wayside for a little bit. But
Yeah.
I know this is important to us, so it's got to be good to get back in the swing of
Yeah,
things.
and I
So
think it's what's nice about this stuff is it's, kind of laid back. We get on when we can and hopefully get more consistent, but it's nice to just get on and chat together, catch up a little bit.
yeah, and we got some good podcast ideas coming up. So
Yeah.
hopefully people will be listening in as we drop those in the future. So
Yeah, we got some exciting episodes coming up planned with a couple interviews coming up, so that'll be good.
yeah, it will be.
Yeah. So it's been a little while to catch up, and like I said, we've been a little lax. I mean, you've kind of had a little bit of a whirlwind going on. So I wanted to catch up a
Absolutely.
little bit with you and what's going on and, just find out a little bit more about where your life has gone now that you're in this
Okay.
new space. And you've kind of gone up and down. You shared a little bit about some of your more recent experiences, I guess, getting involved with personal training and some different things. So now you've come full circle back into the ministry world. So talk us through a little bit about, you had, I give you a lot of credit. I mean, I started my own business. You started your own church. It's still an entrepreneurial spirit. It's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of stuff to do to start something, whether it's a church, whether it's a
Yeah, it is.
company, it's a lot. And you know that, and you put your blood, sweat, and tears
Yeah.
into it. You put everything you got. You want it to be successful. All of us as Christians, I think no matter what we venture into, we want it to be glorifying to God. So whether it's a business in the secular world or whether it's a ministry, we're still trying to minister to people for the name of Jesus. So in your
Yeah.
case, you went out and stepped out and started a new church years ago. You had a little ups and
Yeah.
downs, and then now you kind of came full circle. So um, remind me a little bit again when you started that, like what was the purpose? What was it? What was the date of that? I forget what year that was when you started it.
So we started in 2008
2008. Okay.
with NorthPointe Church.
Okay. And then,
Yeah, which
so
is crazy. That's a long time ago now, already.
it is, I know when you think about that, we're getting like closer to,
Yeah.
20 years, but not quite there yet.
I know. It's
So
crazy.
what brought that on? Like what made you want to start your own church, having had experience in other churches and being in ministry and being a pastor? Like what got you to that point where like I
You
just
know,
want to start my own?
I I'd love to say it was something like spiritual, like, motivation, which I know it was. I mean, it was a God thing, but it literally was out of frustration. It was out of frustration with where the church was at that time. Unfortunately, where the church has gone in a lot of cases, not every case. I think there's a really crazy things going on with the church today, which is so
And when you're
exciting.
saying church, you're
Um,
meaning not the church you were part of. You mean the church globally.
Church overall.
Okay.
Yeah, overall, churches are. Actually, just talking to you, we were just talking about Kerry Newhoff. I listened to his podcast, and he just landed a podcast not too long ago about telling older churches just hand over your keys to the next generation and let them start driving and see what will happen. And so many are just stuck in tradition. So many are stuck on this is the way we've always done it. We can't let the new generation come in. It was very discouraging, and it's back in again 2006, 2007, those kind of that time period. And so yeah, we wanted to launch a church that was connecting to the present generation. I hate to use the word contemporary because there's churches that use contemporary and are still 30 years behind us
Yeah.
behind the times.
Just a term
Like
anymore.
this isn't contemporary. This song came out in 2002.
Yeah.
So I hate to use that. I just like to say culture relevant to the present culture, and so that would be the sound of the day, the style of the day, the approach of the day to bring a timeless message to a current culture. The gospel never changes.
Right.
The word of God never changes. So to adapt that into the culture in which you communicate in such a way that people connect, that's what you got to do. And so we wanted to do that back in 2008, and we did, and it was exciting, and it was a roller coaster ride, and yeah, it was really. it was the hardest thing ever did, probably, when it comes to work and ministry, but yet the most exciting.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it was fun. And yeah, then it just the whirlwind of one thing after another, ministry, some real challenges. I mean, we were pushing the 200 number, which was really cool as a church to start something that gets that size.
So just to encourage
You know,
anybody who's out there, like, listening and thinking about, like, going off in a sister church or starting something, like when you started, obviously you had lots of resources, I'm sure. What was your team like that you had that you launched with? Like, was it a small
okay,
team?
so first of all, we had no resources.
No resources.
So that no, so that's what's so crazy, because people, I hear people like, actually a pastor friend, and they started with, I don't know, somebody gave them 70 grand or something to get started. It's like, okay, we didn't have 700. Like, we didn't have anything. It was a bunch of us got together and said, let's start a church.
So, like, how
And
big was
we
this
put
group
we
that was ready to say, let's go do a
oh
church?
my goodness, with our kids, we got 5. There were 17 of us in that
17. Okay.
initial startup team.
Okay.
So you're looking at 7 of us, so that's 10 other people.
Okay.
And there were 3 other kids in that mix, right? I think, yeah.
Okay. So a couple
So
of
that's down
families
to
then,
7 other
basically.
adults, 7 other adults. That's it.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a small team, and so we started pulling pulling our monies together over some time, that we we went into what we called the launch phase. And so during that time, we pulled some monies together. So it wasn't like we were rich or anything, but we had a little bit of money to start renting a facility and that kind of stuff to get us off the ground. And then God really just provided each time. I mean, but I didn't take a salary for a while. Donna who was on staff. We didn't take a salary for a while. It was a while we were going. Also, it was like, could I maybe at least get paid for what like a guest speaker gets paid? When I went to our board, kind of thing. And so that's how it started. It was really slow. It was how I mean, say really slow. I mean, we were our launch was 70 people. Now that was friends and family and all that kind of stuff. And then we hit some turbulent waters and stuff like that with facility and stuff, but I mean, it wasn't too long before we were up to, 60, 70, and then starting to stride. And again, challenges, there are all kinds
And
of
you guys did
challenges,
it. I
but,
mean, you did a ton of work on the space you had. So, I mean, you poured a
oh
lot
yeah.
into
Oh,
that space, turning it from
we
what it
did.
was to
There's
where you had it.
yeah, that was crazy. I mean, literally scrubbing the ceiling and everything. So it was a great space. It really was. And yes, that those who served and helped, we transformed that space into some really
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't
amazing
even like
space. Unfortunately, it was rented, so but, it all ended up. Yeah,
yeah, but I mean, it looked
that's another
amazing
story,
from
another
where it
time.
started, to where you guys finished with it. I mean, it was like night and day
Yeah.
difference.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was very cool. Yeah, 12,000 square feet, and yeah, we did a great job renovating it, and I was excited to be a part of.
So at what
And
point along the way, so 2008, like what point along the way were you starting to think, I'm not sure this is really happening? Was it really COVID itself? Was it before
every
that?
year,
Every year.
every it's funny, looking back. Yeah, I think you when you go through times like that, you're like, is this? Can we keep doing this? Like, can we keep doing this?
Mm,
Because at times money gets tough. At times you're dealing with a situation, and you're like, God, are you still in this? Are you still working? And he just
hmm.
continually showed up. Sometimes it would be a new person, a new family coming in, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a spark of something exciting again. Sometimes it was a gift, a financial gift, and you're like, I really thought like we were gonna start heading up to start thinking of something else, like but we kept going, and even in the most desperate times, it was amazing just to watch God work.
That's great.
And we saw so many people's lives change. I mean, we baptized over 50 people. Were baptized during the 15 years of ministry that we did, and so that was exciting.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but I mean, we had some challenges as a church, and I go into more detail. And then COVID, COVID
Well, was there
was really the.
before that hit, was there a time in there where you were kind of like coasting for, like, you know what? Hey, we've been really good for like 2 years now. Like, this really feels like it's working, and then you just hit another bump? Or did you ever have a long period of time where things just felt really like clicking and like this is gonna work, this is gonna go?
There were definitely times where things were clicking, and it was on a rise. You had the momentum going, but I don't think there was a 6 month stretch during the entire time where you didn't feel like, okay,
Mm,
what do we do next? What what kind of glitch are we going to hit? And sometimes it's just, sometimes is what room has to be renovated next, because we are always renovating that space. That never ended until we literally left the building. And there's always another situation. You're always dealing with some family struggling with something, and many times, I'm a big fan of, if someone's struggling through things and maybe some sin issues in their lives, whether it's in a family situation or a couple situation or individual, that's God working in their life. And to be able to have the privilege to enter into that somebody gives you the permission, say, hey, would you walk me through this? Will you help me through this? I think it's personal. I think there's no reason that anybody else has to know that's all going on. So we dealt with some really, really deep stuff that most of the church family never, ever knew, because they just didn't know, and some of those times were they would slow you down into momentum because you're sidetracked from the main mission, which is to reach people for Christ. So so it was tough. There were seasons that were really, really tough, and again, other people would not know that except maybe just a few of the key leaders or something like that.
Which is good. I mean, that says a lot to your security and your, authenticity of keeping things from getting out too, that people that don't need to know everything. And, even as Christians, we're nosy and we're busybodies and we want to know things, but we don't need to if it's going to harm the person or the situation more.
Yeah. So, and you want people to feel safe. When they're coming in and they're exploring their spiritual life,
they're vulnerable,
which is the deepest thing.
If they're searching for something, they don't want somebody to go tell their story and then all of a sudden it's out there, right?
Nah. So we really let people journey wherever they were and throw whatever mess they were in, which we're all in a mess, right?
Yeah.
So we all mess. So that's what we did.
So talk a little bit about, because you have an interesting perspective in that, you're in a ministry field, you're dealing with some paid staff and you're dealing with lots of volunteer staff. So that's a unique perspective for most people that, who are in a business world. They're dealing with paid employees and staff employees, not so many volunteers. Walk me through a little bit about like the different perspectives, I guess, when you look at it that way. I mean, obviously, you're paying staff, so you expect certain expectations for them to earn their pay and do their job. Volunteers, and I know we've talked about this over the years a little bit, that's a whole different world. And I actually appreciate your perspective on that, because I think a lot of churches look at volunteers and they're just like, they're volunteer. I know they stink at the job. I know they're not getting it done, but I can't fire them. They're volunteer. So, like, just talk a little bit about that and like the differences that you've seen, that you've been in charge of seeing that now and running, a staff person, paid versus volunteer people in your church organization.
So I think it goes back to my philosophy of serving, that even before I became a Christ follower, I mean, we were religious, we were involved in church, right?
Yeah.
And so I just always thought, once I started following Jesus, even before I became a full follower, I'd say, before I really understood the gospel message that he came, that I'm lost without him, that the stuff I've done in my life and all that, I'm lost and I need a savior. I desperately need a savior. And Jesus comes into our life to be that savior. Before I realized it was not something I could earn or work towards, or it was truly by grace of what Jesus did on the cross, I believe somewhere, and I really think it's a God-given thing, was that when you start following Jesus, you serve. Like, you just serve him. And I mean, he even said it. He said, I came to serve, right? I came. And his example before he dies is what? Washing the disciples' feet, right? And you're like, who in their right mind, before they're ready to die, would even think of doing something so lowly? And yet he was showing his disciples, hey man, this is what it's about. If you're going to follow me, you better learn how to serve. Like, you're here to serve others so that they can find me, right? And so that's just always been a part of it. So I never looked at ministry as paid or non-paid in terms of there's a different level. I just look at it as some of us have the privilege of getting paid for what we do. So we don't have to do other stuff and we could do more of what we love doing. But I just think everybody, if you say you're following Jesus, you serve.
Well, it's that whole
There's no
servant
bench warmer.
leadership model that Christ exemplified in
Yeah,
the
there's
best
there's
way.
no bench warmers in the
Yeah.
kingdom. You just aren't. And if you think you could do that, then you better start reading some more because I just don't think it's not congruent with what it means to follow Jesus. You just serve him. So that was just part of life, and I know I shared before, about my MS story and stuff like that. So through that, like you even the MS, like it gave me opportunities to serve more because I couldn't do other things. Like I could lead a small group and sit on the couch because I was feeling lousy, right? But I could still serve, and so you just get into serving, and so all that was volunteer. If you want to look at it that way, you just volunteer your time and you do things. But I don't know. I still have trouble with people distinguishing between the two. Now, obviously there's a higher standard because if you're giving somebody money to do something, you expect some more. But I think we should have a higher standard for those who volunteer. Yeah,
So
you're
how
you're
would you
serving
have
the
a
greatest work. You
right,
know.
right. So how would you have
Yeah. So
approached situations that you've dealt with where maybe it was a staff member getting paid that either needed to be fired? I'm not sure if you had to fire or let go anybody that was a paid
no,
staff.
I never had to do that.
Never had to do that. Okay. Then talk about, because I'm sure you had to on the volunteer part of things, right? I mean, has there been situations where it's like, well, I know they're volunteers, but I got to make a change here? And
Yeah.
how
So
did
I
that
think you
generally
would.
go when you had to deal with that?
It's always a sensitive issue because you don't want to hinder their journey
Mm,
wherever that is. But if we're not honest with people, we're not straightforward with them, then we're not really helping them on their journey.
yeah.
So to put somebody better into a role and say, listen, you are really good in this role, and this is one of the things that God has really gifted you in, and if you could steer a person into that direction, and then put somebody in that play, and sometimes it can be time. It's like, listen, I need someone in this position that has more time that is available. And
Hmm.
so, although I appreciate your expertise in this area, we're going to have them call the shots, and then you be the personal retainer for, hey, we got a more technical question or something like that. I mean, that's just one example of using,
Yeah.
but I think you try to filter people into where they're best gifted, and then with that, you're always looking for what else can God use them for?
Hmm.
That's how I'm wired too. I just think I mean, I've had people, Julie and I have people in our small group where I'm like, oh man, this couple would be they would be great small group leaders. I can't wait till they become Christians and, and give their lives to Jesus, because then I can start mentoring them and get them to there, because it's going to take them 2 to 3 years to get to that level, right? But you're just looking for how God can use people way beyond where they see themselves, and
And I think
so
sometimes
yeah,
that
so I just think,
that just
go
takes
ahead.
time, right? I mean, sometimes it's, you
It
put
takes
somebody
time.
in a role, they volunteer for a role, you think, okay, this is going to work. And then maybe you recognize and they don't, that, you know what, this isn't the best position for you. But maybe that
Yeah,
opens doors for them to understand, like, oh,
yeah,
I actually would do better over here. And you, as the leader, can recognize that as well based on the feedback you get to then lead them and guide them into a better ministry that they can serve in.
yeah. And I mean, it's part of being open and honest with people,
Yeah.
and you wanting the best for them, and they wanting the best for themselves.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, yeah, I know you I know you love to sing in the shower, but that's a great place for you.
Not up on a stage with a
And
microphone.
no, and that's hard. That's hard to tell
Yeah.
people, but you create systems. I know when the worship team, Donna did a great job of working with people and saying, listen, I just don't feel like you're ready yet. Can I work with you? Can I work with you and develop you? And some people will really work, and guess what? They start to excel. They start to do things. And I can tell you stories about them, but other people's like they just don't do the homework. They're like, no, that. So
Mm.
it wasn't about the work and the intentionality of, I want to get better at this and I want to present my gifts to the best that God can use
Yeah.
them. It was for whatever other reason, So you just steer them differently.
So then you got through some ups and downs. and then
Yeah.
you got into COVID. And then once you hit COVID, what happened with that? Like a lot of other churches.
Oh man, yeah. It's so funny in ministry when you talk to, because I guess I've been interacting with so many people now in ministry that as soon as you mention the word COVID, it's like, oh yeah, we've been through that, and it was probably the worst. I don't know if war is the right word for it, but I think if you've been in the church world, it was the greatest battle that any of us ever probably went through, and may ever in our lifetime,
Mhm.
because life in ministry radically changed, life for the church really radically changed, and yeah, so we weathered it pretty bad. New York State was very, very hard on the church communities. It was hard on the whole state, but it was hard on church communities, and it was hard on people. It was tough, and so, but yeah, again, everybody's like, yeah, no, it was a no-win situation. Everything became politicized, and
Mhm.
it was like, do you guys use hand sanitizer or don't you? And all of a sudden, it was a political issue. It was like, we're just talking about hand sanitizer,
Yeah.
and so it was a lose situation, and honestly, I don't feel like I led well through it. I don't.
Well, it's an unknown. I mean,
Um,
nobody knew how to handle that. And again, like you said, you had not only state things that you had to deal with as an organization, and whether you could stay in person, couldn't stay in person, whether you were going to get fined, not fined. I mean, there's just so many facets to it. And then, like you said, then you had other people's mindsets of like, I don't want to go to church because I'm afraid I'm going to get COVID, or if they don't wear masks and
yeah,
I like them, that whole,
yeah,
there were so many pieces to it. So I can understand why you feel like you weren't prepared. I don't think anybody was
yeah,
prepared.
and it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't really matter any of our views, because the reality is people were really scared.
Yeah.
People were really scared, and that's the reality. So right or wrong, what was said or not, people are afraid, and so you try to lean into that the best you can, and I don't know if I did the best job of that. So,
So,
but it crushed us as a
so
church.
then it would obviously attendance had decreased a lot. I know you guys went online at that
Oh my
point, tried to get up and running
goodness.
online like many other churches.
Yeah, fortunately, and our kids had a lot to do with that, but because of their involvement with other churches, we were able to get up online the first week we went down. So as soon as they started closing things, we were already prepared to be online, which was amazing. Because if you'd asked me 6 months earlier, hey, what do you think about going online? I would be like, there's no way. There's too much work to be done. It's like, and within a week's time or
Oh,
2 weeks, because we had a little forewarning that it was coming.
uh, hey, sorry, we had a little interruption in there. We had a storm and lost power temporarily, so we are taking a mulligan and doing this.
Coming
Yeah,
back
coming
in.
back in and doing the second half of what we were talking about. So we're gonna pick up where we left off.
Yeah.
So you were talking about we got through COVID. You got through COVID. It was a rough time, but the one positive you found out of it was going live stream for your church, which you said had
Yeah,
you
that was
thought about it
wild.
before, you really wouldn't have been able to be ready that quick, but then you were. So that's a cool thing. So I guess if you want to finish
It
up taking us
was.
through that and then where that went from there.
Yeah, so I mean, we went, going backwards, I guess maybe possibly. We were able to go online the next week after we were all shut down. So we had a little preview. We got online, and that was because of our kids and their churches. Literally driving up to Rochester to record, and then bringing it back and putting it together. The band had recorded some songs earlier, so we could splice those in and put together some video stuff, so it'd be online. So that was a real plus, and that was a real learning experience. But yeah, I mean, COVID was just horrible. I
So
don't
then
know how else to put it.
where did your church obviously took a hit from there, and then over the next
Oh
couple
yeah,
of years, like, so where did things go where it got to a point where you were like, this isn't really working? And I know you also had moved out of your location. That was a big part towards the end.
yeah. That was probably. I mean, that was just before. That was about a year before we shut it down. Just about a year, probably
Okay.
8 months or so. Yeah, yeah. So COVID just, it hit where, New York State shut down all the churches for months. I mean, months. It was just, the gyms were open, or the gyms couldn't open
Yeah.
because next door was closed,
Liquor
but the
stores.
bar down the way, they were open. The
All
bars
the
were
liquor
open. So,
stores.
so it was good. Yeah. Yeah. They're open. So necessities.
Yeah.
Maybe if you drink as you go down the aisle, you don't catch anything. I don't know, but it was just crazy. But yeah, that devastated a lot of churches, and even today, I don't, churches, many churches are not back
Mm.
not to where they were,
Yeah.
not pre-COVID. Especially if there's a lot of momentum going into church.
Yeah.
Even if now momentum is picking up now again, I think in quite a few churches across the United States, which is really, really cool. But even if you look back, I don't think in a lot of the churches, the numbers are not where they were. They just weren't. So
Yeah.
hopefully if the momentum keeps going, we'll be in good
And I
shape.
think it
But
is interesting
uh,
to look at that whole world because, I know a lot of, like you said, a lot of churches were online doing streaming services before, but now the amount that are is like astronomical. So to
yeah,
be able to have access to pretty much any church you want to view or watch from any state now on any day of the week, that never used to be available except for
yeah,
some of these big churches, throughout the country. But now pretty much any size church can now be seen live streamed with a YouTube channel or wherever else they're streaming.
yeah,
It's pretty wild. So the accessibility of now getting a good gospel message out there to the country, to the world, is really incredible. And I
yeah,
think that was
yeah.
one of the huge blessings definitely coming out of that.
Yeah. Now there's two sides of that. One
Mm.
is the let's go with the bad side first. The reality is it's not going away. Some churches have said, "Oh, let's not go online so we get more
Mm.
people out," stuff like that. It doesn't go away because here's the thing: most people are looking online. Most people are visiting your church online before they ever step foot in the door because now you have the advantage. It's like, oh, we're looking for a new church, or for whatever reason. Let's
Yeah.
forget the reasons for now. But they're looking for a new church. So what they're going to do is they're going to pop online. They're going to listen to the music. They're going to listen to the message. They're going to see the style. They're going to see how interactive it is. So, a church who literally throws up a camera and records the service, including the band and people coming and going, and people getting up and down and greeting, all that, like it's just not exciting. And so we have to be aware of that. Whatever the church is, you got to be aware. Hey, people are watching. So it has to take on a whole new feel. It can't just be what's happening on a Sunday morning. Typically,
Well, also you're losing
um,
that interaction with the people live in there and the welcoming, and
yeah,
you don't get any of
oh
that
yeah.
just by watching. So if you're really searching for a church, it's kind of I hate to say, but kind of a poor way to do it, without
It is
physically
an
being in the building.
It is, but the reality is people are
Yeah,
doing it, and
yeah,
so you have to change gears. If you're going to be online as a church, you have to change gears. So you have to be thinking, okay, how can we interact? So now it's all about, if you're going online, it's how do you interact online
hmm
with people to connect them
yeah,
in, and that's a whole new ballgame. So churches literally, if they're multi-site, they view their online church as another site. It's another campus. It's another thing. It's just a different animal.
right.
And so it'll have an online pastor, that kind of thing.
So then the other
Because
thing is that I would assume is a negative. Wasn't sure if you're going to bring this one up or not. Is also the
yeah,
amount of people that are still not going back to the building because now they're too comfy sitting at home watching
yeah,
for the local church they used to go to. So now they're not
I
engaged back in it again. I don't know what the numbers are. You probably know better, but I would imagine there's still quite a few people that are kind of living in
you
that.
know yeah, I think what people walked away with is a majority of people saw, and this is probably a negative side, but they saw, I think they saw in their own lives, they just didn't see the need for it anymore,
Mm,
which is a sad. I mean,
yeah,
that's really sad. Okay. But that's a reality. And you can't ignore
right.
it. It's not going to go away. But for a majority of people, they looked and said, huh, we haven't been doing this for 6 months or 8 months or 10 months or a year. Huh, we're not really missing anything. So that's really sad.
Yeah,
But I think that's just where people are, and they went all their life. And it's also easy it's easy to give up. It's easy,
hmm
it's so easy. I mean, come on, listen, I haven't been exercising regularly because of all the turmoil, moving, all that kind of stuff. And it's so easy to get out of the habit.
mm.
It is
Oh
so
yeah, it doesn't
easy.
take
And it's
long
the
at
same
all.
thing with being a part of
hmm
churches, So if all you did was visit, if all you did was visit, take up a seat on a Sunday morning and leave, that's easy to get out of that habit. If you are truly engaged, you're engaged in smaller groups, you're engaged in serving, be a part of the whole bigger operation of what church is all about, then I think it was harder. And it was like, no, as soon as you had the opportunity, it's like, no, this is what you do as a follower of Christ,
Yeah.
you're engaged in your local church. So, yeah. But so, so it was hard. I think it was hard. It was devastated us. We went from the COVID to, then we had facility issues going on. And then, And then, yeah, we were literally forced out of our building. I don't know how else to way to say it. And then that's a whole other story in itself. But then we tried to reboot and just couldn't. It
So what
just
was
there
what was the
was
final nail in the coffin when you finally said, okay, this is done?
there was a few of
Okay.
them. I mean, to be real, there's how many core families
Mm,
are there really not just engaged but contributing to the mission
mm,
financially, because you
yeah.
have to have so much of financial backing, and sometimes people don't realize that church just doesn't happen for free.
You gotta have support.
It's the families pulling
Yeah.
together, and that's why we unashamedly at LCBC say hey, a tithe is a great place to start. If you're a part of a local church, if you're following Jesus, then you're stepping out in faith with a tithe. And so, but if people aren't doing that, then oh my goodness, where does all that money come from? Like there's no there's
Yeah.
no tree out back. There's no, and so you have to weigh out all those things, and it was hard because there was a good there was a small good core of friends and people that we had to say this is this we got to stop, and so, and there's two ways to look at it. One is, okay, it was a failure and all that kind of stuff. And I don't look at it that way at all. Yes, were the things I did. Yeah, I truly believe, things rise and fall in leadership, right? So, and I can look back pre-COVID and during COVID and after COVID and say, man, there were so many things that looking back on now, I could have done differently. I could have done better. Um, but it was just a time to say, you know what, God did something really amazing in a season,
Yeah.
and it was a long season. I mean, 15, plus years, in prep and shutting down all that stuff. That's a long season.
Yeah.
And God did an awful lot in that, and that was exciting.
And it's a great
So we
attitude. It's a
celebrated.
great attitude to have coming out of it, realizing, like you said, I mean, you learn from every failure. It's not that you have to walk away and
Yeah,
hang your head. Sure, and you're going to second
yeah,
guess a whole lot of stuff, but you got to move
yeah,
on, and you did.
yeah.
Um, and
And the reality is, you want to leave. There still are kingdom resources that are at play. And if God can use them better in another local
mm,
church, then you have to be willing to say that's what we need to do.
yeah,
And if God can use those people that we're trying to restart something, we're trying to re-energize, and you just say, you know what, God can use these people elsewhere.
yeah,
The kingdom is much bigger than one little
right.
local church. And so part of that was just celebrating that, and so yeah, as tough as it was, as heartbreaking it was, as many tears were shed. Um, yeah, we celebrated. I think I think probably one of the best ways we could,
Yeah.
and
So then
and
from
then we moved
there,
on.
you moved on.
Yeah,
Whole big
yeah,
life change. Picked up, left New York, right?
yes, yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I mean, so we temporarily went to Virginia as we're in between looking for helping out with our daughter and son-in-law and our granddaughter down there for a time, and then you're looking for a church and a new ministry, and oh man, so it's like yeah, hell, and the stuff they never teach in seminary. How do you support yourself
Yeah.
financially in between?
Right.
How do you look for a
Yeah.
job?
Well, it was a long
And
journey
it,
for you too. I mean, what was what was the time period between
it was
when
it
you
was
left
a
and
year and a
year and
half.
a half? Okay,
It
so
was
year and a half you
yeah,
had been
year and a
looking.
half.
You had a lot of different options
Yeah,
and things out there. You dove into which we talked about a few some other podcasts ago. Was you dove in and got some train. You got your certification for personal training in the meantime.
yeah, yep,
So
yep. So
a lot
I
of
was
different
doing other
life stuff.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was good. And I worked ID life
Hmm.
hard. As hard as I could, because again, looking for a job is full time job. So
Yeah.
there was, I'd come across a church and like, okay, hey, can you get this done for us? And it's only 12 to 16 questions, and it's only take an hour. Then 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours later,
Yeah.
you're still writing, and
So how many?
and the next
Go ahead.
go ahead. As you say, the next church has different
Right.
questions, and you're like, oh no, I can't even copy and paste. I gotta start all over.
ChatGPT. So now what how many churches did you actually apply to?
Oh my goodness, I don't know.
Well, let
I
me ask this. Like how many did you apply
100,
to that
at
got
least 100.
somewhere, not just that you threw out resumes? That got to a point where there was communication.
Wow. Oh my goodness, maybe
That
30,
many.
maybe 40.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if I realized
I
this.
don't even, I mean, I'd have to look back at all my notes
Wow.
because, some was just, hey, we'd like to talk to you. Some it was, hey, I just talked a little bit.
But how many that you got
sometimes
to?
it
How many that
was
you
in the
got to like an
questions.
interview process of some sort, whether it was initial and you were done, or diving in further than that?
Wow, at least a dozen.
Okay.
At
All
least a
right. So
dozen.
still, that's a
Yeah.
lot. That's a lot. So now the good
Yeah.
news is now
Yeah.
you finally landed, right? Right. So
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
So you finally, after
It's
all
just
that, you finally got somewhere.
yeah, and it's strange going into you wrestle with coming out of a certain job situation, like because I was the lead pastor. I mean, the founding and lead pastor of NorthPointe Church. Again, not associated with Andy Stanley's NorthPointe Church in Atlanta because we were just not that smart and hip and all that kind of stuff. But we adopted a lot of their philosophy, stuff like that. But anyway, so having being at the helm where you can make all the decisions, it was like, what do I want to do again? And there are a couple things I did not want to do. Did not want to be a solo pastor. I did not want to go into a location where I was the only guy. I didn't want to be the only. We didn't want to be in a remote area where it was like it was a small little church and just trying to make ends. Just not even trying to make ends meet, but just they were stuck where they were.
Mm.
I was like, I'm not going to do that because it takes a lot of time to turn a church around like that. So I didn't want to go back into that. So yeah, there was a lot of do I want to be the lead guy again, or was I content coming alongside somebody younger? And actually started having some good discussions with church along the way that I would have been coming alongside a younger guy, and I was looking forward to that. That was that was a cool possibility. And I don't. It wasn't a right fit as it got closer, but it would have been cool. That would
Yeah,
have
you
been
would have had
fun
like
to
a
invest.
mentor, role at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and some speaking opportunities and stuff like that because I do enjoy speaking and the prep work for that and yeah, I think that's part of my gift mix. So
So where did you
um,
land?
yeah, well, first so one of the churches I got engaged with was a 6 months process, like 6 months we were talking, and then it all fell apart, like yeah. um and that's some of the weird, if we're talking about ministry and going, and the hard thing about it is it's a messed up process. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just a messed up process. It's messed up on the half of how you look for a church and how you go through that. And then from the church's perspective, it's very hard and difficult to find somebody. And this whole dating, I mean, we call it like a dating thing, you do with a church where it's like they get to know you get to know them a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of time, how like we think back to the dating years, like, you don't come out with all your faults, you're sort of like, you try to put your best foot
Yeah.
forward kind of thing, you put on you dress up, um, and churches do that too. And you do that going into churches, and it's hard to get past that to see what the church is really like. And that takes time. And so, yeah, so one of the churches we thought was, hey, this is a shoe-in. This is in the sense of like, this is a really good fit. We feel connected. They felt connected, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, it came down to a vote of the congregation. And so this is after 6 months. This is like mind boggling. And so the elders were all on board. Like we really connect with the elders and their wives. The whole search team was on board. The younger generation of the church was all on board. Like we had met with them and talked with them. But there was an older generation that did not want to change anything. And I'm a change agent. So like I come in and like, hey, let's focus on the younger generation. Let's reach people who are lost and that kind of stuff. And so yeah, so the vote went bad. It was just under the percentage of what they needed because you had to have it 75% majority, which was mind boggling. And so after 6 months investment of time, energy, finances, I mean, there's a lot of investment in that too, travel back and forth and all that kind of stuff, and delaying others because you thought this was the right fit, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
just it went down, man. So it's a
It's a lot of
hard
facets to
thing.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, I can't believe this, and but it inspired a book. So yes, I am writing a book now that was inspired by that whole process, and it's not all about that process at all. It's just it inspired to talk about the church and the
Mm-hmm.
challenges that 95% of the churches in America are going through, and And I don't know if I see a lot written about what I'm writing about. So I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to
that'll be exciting
finishing
to
that
watch
up
that
and
whole
getting out
journey
there.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with it. So, but anyway, so yeah, so back in February, so I'm applying to everything, like literally everything in ministry now. So it's like I don't, got wherever you want. So it's associate roles, it's senior pastor roles, it's lead roles, it's speaking roles. There are a few churches that connected with, and they look good too. Again, it had a lot of potentials. I think there were some really good potential things out there along the way, and I had some in the works when I connected with this church called LCBC Church, and I sent a resume in for it was just a role within one of, so LCBC Church stands for Lives Changed by Christ. So that's what the LCBC stands for. It used to stand for something else, but they changed the name years ago, and so that's it. We have 25 locations,
Wow.
and so we are one of what you consider a mega church, which is mind-boggling. So, and the weird thing is, so let me backtrack a little. So we got because people ask us, how'd you get that? One of the first things you do when you run into somebody at LCBC is, so how long you been coming? How'd you get connected with LCBC? And it's like, well, I've been coming for like 1 week now because I was hired a week ago, or whatever it was. And I said, but I got connected about, oh my goodness, 10, 15 years ago, because from NorthPointe Church, we had heard about a 1 day seminar with actually Andy Stanley, Craig Rochelle. We're doing a 1 day seminar up at LCBC Church in Manheim, PA, right? And so we're like, oh, let's go down, check this out. Let's go to this conference. And so that was our first exposure to what LCBC was. And it was like, wow, this is what we're trying to do on a much, 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 much smaller scale. Now, 10, 15 years ago, they were not as large as we are now, right?
Yeah.
But at that point, it was still a pretty impressive, like when you go to their main campus. And so here we were and we did that 2 or 3, I was at least 2, 3 seminars there at the main campus. And then our son Victor started going there when he went to college. And then him and his wife Teresa started going there. Once they got married, they started going to the main campus. He was going to another location while he was in college. It was closer to his college he was going to. So we've had connection with them, and we'd go visit, and we'd go to the main campus we had visited at least 2 campuses before we even got connected. But then I got connected in February, and the guy so it went from a simple interview to all of a sudden jumped up to some of the higher ups, which is pretty surprising. And they started talking about other possibilities than the position I had applied for. And so, what do you think of this? And would you consider this? And
So the original role
so
that they
we,
were looking at you for had morphed into something else then to what you actually got.
yes, yes. So yeah, so it was that position was literally the foot in the door to say, hey, you could do this, but would you consider this other role, which is the location pastor for what is called Cole Township. And so we're up in the, I don't know, we're sort of, I don't know, I'm still not sure if we're in a valley or we're on top of the mountain where we are exactly. I know you go into the town that's nearby, and then you go down to, so we're still learning all the mountains and stuff around here. But it's coal country. It's where the coal mines used to be. And not far from us is a literal coal tour where you could go down into the mines. And a lot of the towns around here are like what you would see in the movies when you're watching a movie about the coal days and the miners coming out
Western
of
PA, that's
the
it.
Western PA. Yeah. Although we're not really, I mean, we're still central here. So, um, where we are, because Western PA, you're getting out to Pittsburgh area. We're
That's
not
not
that
that
far
far
out.
out.
So,
Yeah.
nah, because we're just south of Bloomsburg a little bit. So, and near a famous amusement park called
Yep.
Knoebels, which many people know about.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
So
So,
you landed the new role, so now you're settling in. That's awesome. And
yeah.
I guess we'll have to catch up again another time and hear a little bit more about the church itself and kind of where that goes and what
Yeah,
they're all
that'd be
doing
fun.
and So going back to you now with all this life experience you shared with us, with your journey, I guess two questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
One is, what do you think you learned the most out of that whole experience between starting a church, ending a church, searching for a while before landing something else new?
Wow. That's a loaded question. Let's make it simple. God's in control,
Okay.
and God grows.
Mm,
God causes growth. Nobody else does, and that's really hard to grasp. Um, I mean, LCBC, we're a fast growing church. It's exciting to be a part of. The reality is that's God's doing.
yeah.
You know, And do I think there's ways to till the soil and plant the seed and water it and all that kind of stuff? Yes. And I think LCBC has discovered some really cool ways to do that, in which it's fostering the ability for God to grow it faster and to impact more lives, because that's what we're all about. I mean, we're all about, introducing people to Jesus and together fully following Him. So that's it's that simple. You can't get much more simple than that. But God does that. And so sometimes you could put all the things into play and God just has other plans. And we learned that with NorthPointe, that God has other plans. So, and also it's God's timing. I had no idea we'd be out a year and a half.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I have to bring this up with when I think of God's timing, because a lot of times we can get focused on us. Like, God, okay, what are you trying to teach
Mm,
me? Okay, what did I do wrong? Am I trying to do, whatever it
yeah.
is, right? And we forget that it may not be us God's working on. Not that He's not working on us, but it may be, I mean, it could be our spouse. It could be people we're connecting with, that God's saying, this is not about you right now. I
Mm,
just want you in this role for a time, because I want these other people to grow in certain areas. And I need you in that place to do all that. Right. And sometimes I don't think we think about
yeah.
that.
That's a
We
great
think it's all about
perspective.
us,
Yeah.
So I think, I think that's what I learned more in that whole year and a half was, you just, there, he's so big. He has such a big plan. We do the best we can. We try to be faithful in what we can, in what we're given at the moment. And, we can't control more than that.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
And then, of course, the next
So,
question: what would be your mulligan that you could have taken or would have taken starting from the start of your church up to this period?
okay. So if I rewound, I'll talk to all those young guys thinking of going into seminary and into ministry. Learn a trade.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh no, seriously! Like, if you were a certified electrician, if you were a certified plumber, if you were something else, and honestly, I think it's really good for guys, and even get gals going into ministry. I think full time ministry. Like, I I think full time ministry is something you do when you can't do anything else, but you can do anything else. And I mean, you have the abilities, you have the skills, you have the drive. You could be the best salesman out there, but you just can't do that. Like, there's something inside that says, no, I want to invest my entire life to this work. Like, I don't, I'm not. Yes, I could be a great plumber, and I could do a good job, and all that, but I don't want to be a plumber. I want to be in full time ministry here doing this. Right? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? And but having to do that, like, a lot of times you're going to be in transitions. I mean, it's very common in ministry to be in transitions. And even the church you're a part of, you could think, oh, this is it, this is where it's going to be, it's going to be here forever, and all that kind of stuff. And God has other plans, and in between there's seasons. And if you got a family you got to support and all that kind of stuff, if you got a trade you can fall back on, you got a second career that you can fall back on, there's something else in the mix. um yeah, that helps you in those tough times.
So just to clarify, your mulligan would be you would want to have had a trade before.
I would go back to 25 and have a trade or something like that. Yeah, maybe that's be my mulligan. Yeah, I don't know if, I mean, I think God walked us through a lot of tough times this year and a half, and not just us. I think people around us, but He had His reasons, and
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'll ever understand
No,
them,
you might not.
but I know He did, and but we know He brought us to this point, and we know this is where we're supposed to be, and it's pretty exciting.
That's great. Well, we're looking forward to all your success there in your new job. So happy for you that you've
Thank
landed a
you.
new place and a new place to live and still settling in and just
And you got to come out and visit
yeah,
one week.
exactly. Yeah. And just knowing that, like you said, God's in control of
Yeah.
everything, even when we don't think something's going our way. He's always got the plan.
Yes.
So that's such a security to live on. So
Yeah. Well, great talk to you, Brian, about this.
yeah,
I know this is not our usual topics
no,
because
but
we
it's
always
good.
have
Yeah,
guests and stuff on. So it's neat to talk about
yeah.
it.
So
So
thanks for joining, and join us next time.